Welcome. I'm coming live from the picturesque view of my car in true full moon fashion. I have double, triple booked myself, so we're going to be working from here. And I'm really excited about this. About half an hour that we're going to have shortly with the amazing well, you'll see when she if you haven't met Bliss, you will see she is just full of the most amazing energy. And I'm really excited because Bliss helps me massively. So she's one of those amazing women who I go to when I need some help. We all need some help. And she supports me, and she just fucking hell, I feel held. She was my doula at my last birth, and she is awesome. So one of the other reasons I'm really excited to have Bliss join us in a moment is that Bliss has, and I don't know what she's going to talk about exactly, and she's completely free to talk about exactly what she wants to. But one of the things that Bliss might share about is sexual boundaries, because she's really well versed in the world of Tantra. So I'm super excited to hear about all of this, and I'm going to see if I can invite her to join. So let's praise the technology goddess and see if we get... There she is! Yay! We have
Technology is so good when it works, isn't it?
Yeah. Welcome, full moon, welcome. You're looking beautiful. How are you doing, Bliss?
Very much. Yeah, very glad to be here. I've got my morning coffee. So, yeah, just excited to have a chat with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm always happy to talk to you. So I'm going to ask you very simply and just see what you say. So where are your boundaries, Bliss?
Wow. Well, I think that we have wise beings who live inside of us. And so when I check in with my boundaries, I check in with myself in different places. So I ask in my head, how do I, what am I thinking about this? What are the thoughts that I have? How is this going to benefit me in terms of learning or growth in terms of my mind? So I might check in with my head and see, is this a yes or no in my head? I might check in with my heart. So how does this really feel for me? Is there a way emotionally that I can expand through taking this on, or by supporting this person, or by getting involved with a project? Is it something that my heart is open to? So do I feel a yes or do I feel a no within my heart? Then I check in with my belly. So, what's my gut feeling about this? Is it something that makes me feel a little bit queasy when I think about doing it? And is that queasiness coming from a sense of excitement? Is it something that it's like a challenge for me? Is it taking a step up in my life? If it's something that I am going to grow through doing, and that's why I feel a little bit queasy. Is it the queasiness of excitement, or is it the queasiness of actually this doesn't feel right and there's something rotten? There's something inside me that says this is going to make me unwell. Am I overextending myself? So I think checking in with your gut and your belly, and if you feel a lot of real solidness, or you feel a softness and an expansion in your belly, then that's probably a yes. Whereas if you feel something that's more like a hardening or a nausea, then that's probably a no. And then I check in with my womb. And so, all of these wise beings, so it's like a wise counsel inside of me when I'm checking in with myself about doing something. So in your womb, this is where your wise woman lives. So you've really got access to this kind of here she is, this kind of like crone energy. And so when you're checking in with your womb, again, are you feeling that pulsating? Are you feeling that sense of opening and expansion? Is this something that you want to invite into yourself? Is this something that you feel you can actually birth into a greater expansion of your being? You know, are you birthing more of who you are by saying yes? Or if you feel a contraction or something that feels a bit like a hook, so it feels like you might be you know, overgiving or depleting yourself through taking part in something, then that's probably a no from the womb. And then if it's yeah, if it's a sexual matter, then I will want to check in with my yoni. And so, you know when you meet someone whether your yoni is saying yes or no, right? Often it's the first thing to say yes or no when you meet an individual. So it's quite easy to get the answer from that. And I think sometimes this can be where it becomes confusing with boundaries in relationships, because your yoni will be saying, oh, yes, you know, when you meet someone, but your heart might be saying no, or your yoni will be saying yes, and your womb will be saying maybe, and your gut will be saying no. So it's really important to enter into a kind of quiet space, you know, to give yourself the opportunity to really listen to the wise counsel from all of these parts of yourself. And I don't think that you can express clear boundaries until you've got clarity with the answers from all of the parts of your being, if that makes sense.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. So, how would you respond to somebody that then said, gosh, that's a lot to do when I've got to make a decision quickly? Um, what would you say?
Well, I think it can be really quick. You know, I think you just have to close your eyes and tune in, you know, and you just can even put your hand over those places. So you can put your hand over your head, yes, no, maybe. If it's a maybe, then you just leave it there. You sit with it and you ask the other parts of yourself, because you will definitely get a yes or no from at least two, you know. And then if you've got two no's, two maybes and a yes, that's a no, right? And
Yeah.
if you've, yeah, do you see what I mean? Or if you've got three yeses and two maybes, or you know, like four yeses and one no, then this is where there's work to be done. So this is where, if there is a no, then you need to check in with yourself about, is the resistance that's coming up within you related to past unhelpful learning? So this is how I describe trauma, right? So if you have had unpleasant or painful on your ability to make choices in the present moment, then it's about really welcoming those wounded places home. So if you're getting a no because it's coming from a place of resistance that's related to trauma or past unhelpful learning, then that is something for you to address. Or is it a red flag, right? Are you saying no because you're picking up something in the other person that you feel uncomfortable about? So if it's that, that's when communication is really key. And I think really bridging, so expressing clearly what your needs are, and then inviting that other person to step into the space to explain to you how they're going to bridge that gap. So, you know, Kate McKenzie does amazing work on this. I really recommend her. If you haven't worked with her, she does amazing work in relationships. But I think bridging is also key when you're establishing boundaries, and whether that's in a working relationship or if it's a romantic or a friendship, I think really communicating clearly, what are your needs? What is it that's going to make you feel safe enough to say yes? So again, that's another clear way. So it's not saying no to someone, but it's saying, I can expand into this if this, and this is provided in order to make me feel safe and comfortable. So it's about having that clarity. And I think sometimes we're afraid to ask for what we need. So it takes a bit of courage just to say, well, actually, I feel vulnerable here. Please, can you offer me this thing that's going to make me feel really secure? And then it's a full yes, full body yes.
So for anyone that's joined partway through this, Bliss is sharing with us about how she works with her boundaries and how she maybe teaches boundaries to people too. And Bliss is, and tell me if I'm wrong, maybe coming from a place of tantra and maybe coming from a first perspective of sexuality with boundaries, but also
Yeah,
covering.
I think so. And I think this is the other thing that's really helpful in boundaries work is the wheel of consent. So that is Betty Martin's work. And it's interesting to look at the ways that sometimes our boundaries are conflicted because we might be we might be doing something to someone else, but in that process, we could actually be taking from them. So there's a thing which is about serving, and there's a thing about doing, and there's a thing about allowing ourselves to receive, or are we just tolerating something which is happening to us? Yeah, because that's also a form of receiving. So I really recommend, you can get a great infographic with the wheel of consent, and it's really interesting to look at how this impacts on everything that we do. So for me, I'm a touch therapist, so I do work in the realm of sacred sexuality, and I also work in clinical practice as a massage practitioner, and I do receive a lot when I am doing my treatments for my clients. It is just like being in heaven when I'm offering someone loving touch. You know, it's the most enjoyable thing that I could ever imagine doing in my life. So I have to check in with myself, particularly, I'll give an example. So I'm treating someone at the moment who's training for a triathlon. And so when they step into my treatment room, I'm thinking, this is really good. So working with this really attractive guy, right? So when I'm in the treatment space, I have to check in with my own boundaries to ensure that the type of touch that I'm giving to this client is in alignment with his needs. So, you know, it's about really honoring his needs and what he's brought into the treatment room, rather than gratifying my own needs of, you know, touching someone who has a very attractive body. So you know, this is where really I think boundaries are key, and professionalism. So how to step into a place ethically with the people that we serve, where we are making their needs paramount. So as helpers and as people who are working in caring professions, the role of the practitioner should always be coming from a place of serving the needs of the client first, and then you can have lots of fun.
Gorgeous. So in my course, I link people up to the Betty Martin stuff, and we talk about it and we work with it. And also, you can simply just go to Betty Martin's website and download it, because she does this wonderful, beautiful thing of saying, you know, I receive through all these amazing people that come and do my workshops. So please have this. And if you want to come and, you know, so like Bliss says, the infographic is there. You can print out the 3-minute game and read into it. It's really, really fascinating. And I go through aspects of that in the course as well. So I just wanted to go back to the yes, the no, and the maybe. So Bliss, could you talk a little bit about what is a no?
Oh wow, so a no is stop. So, and a no is, this is not happening. And if it has happened, then it's a stop and it will no longer continue. So this is the thing about consent, right? Is that consent is mutable, so it can change. So you might go into an encounter with someone with a full fuck yes, you know, that's like some people describe it as, this full yes. And over time, what you have been experiencing within your body might change, and you might feel that you actually want something different. So your needs have changed over the course of the encounter. And so what was a yes would become a no. And so to be clear about this, so no isn't necessarily coming from a place of aggression, although it can be. And I think sometimes, particularly if you have rejection sensitivity, then you might hear no as, I don't want you. And that's actually not what's being said. So when someone says no, they are saying, I have had enough. And you can say no thank you, you know, to kind of soften that a little bit. So no means stop. And if something hasn't happened, then no means this will not happen. And I think there is a thing about it, particularly in business as well. People don't like to be seen as being overbearing now. So we've got this idea of emotional intelligence, which is happening in business. And it's almost like people are afraid to say no, and they just want you to guess. I was talking about this with a friend actually earlier. And so it's, how do we elicit clarity in our working relationships as well as in our sexual relationships? I think it's really important, and it just saves so much time, because I don't want to be phoning people up or emailing them and you know, not really understanding what's happening. I'd much rather have that clarity. I'd much rather have that no thank you.
Yeah.
And then we're really clear about where we stand. Whereas a maybe is like, you can play a little bit with the maybe. It's like a maybe says, I'm not sure, but I'm willing to explore.
Mm-hmm. So that's where you come from with a maybe. And so I was wondering whether a maybe in a sexual encounter is actually a no.
I think a maybe means go very carefully.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is what a lot of people have a challenge with, particularly around consent in sexual encounters. So, because we've been conditioned to be very accommodating and receptive and welcoming, and there's this idea that saying no somehow makes you into an ogre. So sometimes people will say maybe and they'll actually mean no. And so some of the work that I do in my priestessing practice is giving people their authentic voice and giving them the permission to actually say no. And so some of the work that we do, it can be very aggressive. You know, if it's partner work, sometimes I'll get my clients to work with their partner and to actually just say no, you know. And so when you're saying that no, it's really coming from your gut. You know, it's coming from the core of your being, and it can be, for someone who has never really said no, it can sometimes be upsetting, because they are connecting with a part of themselves that they've never given permission to speak. And so, you know, there has to be a safe place for welcoming that and comforting them, and, you know, acknowledging that they actually have the right to say it. You know, we've gone through our whole lives, and I think particularly parenting methods that have been parents that don't say no as well. There's been a lot of very permissive parenting, particularly in the last kind of 30 years or so. So people haven't heard this word being directed to them. And I think that's another thing, is that if you're not used to hearing no, then you might not feel comfortable saying no. So giving people the permission to say it, and understanding that maybe it doesn't mean no. So what it means is, let's explore and with respect. So with a heightened sensitivity to the other person and their needs. So maybe means I need you to check in with me, and I'm willing to play. Let's play is what maybe means, but I need care. And I might say no at any time, you know, or I might say yes. It might become a yes. So it's a very, there's a lot of potential. You know, it's something that holds possibility for expansion or contraction. So it's you know, I describe it as the kind of Play-Doh of the boundaries, you know. So the maybe is, it could become anything.
Gorgeous. So do you think maybe that no has, for some people in some situations, become a bit of a shadow aspect?
Yeah, I think people demonize the no.
Yeah.
And I think that particularly there is a sort of thing in the media where again and again and again we are seeing these stories of women, particularly women who have been taken advantage of by men who are in positions of power. And so there's something about having the ability to speak truth to power. And I think if you're in a situation where you feel subordinate to someone else, it's much harder to say no in those situations. And so we have to really train ourselves to be able to check in with what's appropriate for us and what isn't, and to be able to speak that, even if it's frightening for you to speak that. Because I think someone who is in power, when you are unyielding to that, I think it creates a circumstance where it becomes much more difficult to be taken advantage of. If you show your, and there's this thing about being like a bitch queen, you know, and so like women don't want to be seen to be a bitch queen. They want to be seen to be loving and beautiful and gentle and a Disney princess and, you know, all of this kind of stuff. And actually, we can hold as much power, we can hold as much masculine energy as any of these people who are in positions of power. And I think oftentimes those kind of encounters are coming from this toxic, you know, this rape culture style of masculinity, which is actually unhealthy, and it's coming from a place of lack within the masculine paradigm. So I think I'm rambling a little bit, but I just think it's so present in our consciousness. There's this great sense of injustice, of these assaults and disrespect that is being experienced by women. And I think we shouldn't allow ourselves to tolerate it. So even if it's coming from the very smallest locker room kind of joke that you might hear your friends making in the pub, I think this is where it starts, and this is where we can start to train ourselves to shut that down. And, you know, if you hear that kind of stuff being spoken about women, or if you hear your friends grading women out of 1 to 10 when they walk past them in the street, you know, just to say that's unacceptable. And actually, you know, for the masculine to hear the boundaries of the feminine, this creates a sense of awe and respect. And I think this is the thing, sometimes we don't want to be seen as being intimidating, but actually there's nothing wrong with being powerful. And I think by having strong boundaries, you really garner to you that sense of personal power, that then it gives you the energy then to serve and to be loving and to be very gentle and very welcoming, you know. Because if you say yes to everybody all the time, then you're exhausted and depleted and overwhelmed. And then that has the converse effect of then making us very irritable, you know, so you become less of a nice person.
Yeah,
You say yes all the
absolutely.
time. Yeah,
Yeah, you've got those polarities there, haven't you? It's so
yeah,
important, and that's what I'm finding as I was researching and continue to research about boundaries and about everything. Is everything is within these polarities, isn't it? And
yeah.
you have to be with one to fully be with the other. Otherwise, you're just imbalanced, out of balance, and actually trying to be with the jolly, joyful, welcoming feeling doesn't work fully. You know.
Oh,
Um,
sure, yeah. And acknowledging when actually enough is enough. So you might have been very giving and very loving towards an individual, and then there might come a time when you have to say, I am reclaiming myself and my energy from this, and with all love to you, I now need to focus on myself and to be able to turn away from someone without having a sense of shame or a fear that that person will reject you. Because for you to say, I am focusing on myself, it's then giving them permission to also assert their own boundaries, so it's like a ripple in a pond. I think if we become very clear in ourselves about our boundaries, other people feel that they can do it too.
yeah, beautiful. Just one very quick question before I ask you about your work. That just keeps popping in my head. Seems a bit random, but I think it must be important because it keeps popping in my head. So when you were talking about people in positions of power, um, can you think of some examples of that?
Mm.
Because I think it's something that we maybe don't necessarily think, oh yeah, that person is in a position of power with me, so I have to think about my boundaries here, and I have to really think about what Bliss was just saying there.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, I was making reference particularly to the entertainment industry because that's where we've seen a lot of these high profile cases. And so I think particularly for people who are jobbing actors, these people who are in positions of power, they are the people who will determine whether or not you will get a job, whether or not you will play a role, whether or not you'll get a part in a production. But in outside of that world of entertainment, I think it does apply to other types of jobs. So your clients are in a position of power. If you're a practitioner and you're working one-on-one with your clients, they have the power to pay you. So they're in a position to really ask for what they want, and then you're placed in a position of having to be more adaptable. And so there's that risk, particularly if a relationship with a client oversteps that boundary and you become more friends than clients, then I think sometimes that they can then abuse that position of power that they have even more. And I think this is why it's like having that boundary, as hard as it is, it protects you as a practitioner as well as your clients. And as much as possible, it's good to try and stay like in the practitioner zone. So also, these kind of government figures, so people that are in positions of power, in terms of dealing with your council tax or your planning. If you're making an application to a government body, then they're in a position of power to say yes or no to your dreams. And so, how are you approaching them? Are you coming at them in a place of supplication, or are you coming to them by having a place of clarity for what your needs are? So I think there's that kind of power. There's also family members, so in-laws or even our own parents to an extent. They hold power over us because we are concerned about how they see us. And I think particularly within a family dynamic, you want the other people in your family to think that you're doing a good job of living your life, right? So if they don't have that feeling about you, then it may be something where you feel beholden to them. So you are trying to please them in some way. So you're trying to be the perfect child, or the perfect grandchild or the perfect daughter-in-law. So I think they hold a lot of power in our lives. I mean, there's so many different things, aren't there? And also, if you're involved in a community, then I think if you're coming into a community setting or you're co-creating a project, then the power dynamics within those kind of groups are really mutable. And it's very interesting to see how there is a way to hold power which is very lifting others up, and there is a way to hold power where you're actually standing on other people in order to maintain that sense of elevation. And so I'm always interested in leadership and how are people taking on these power dynamics. You know, I really love the work of Dr. Lynn Sedgmore. I really recommend her Luminaries work. So she's incredible because she's really focused on everybody in the circle and what do you have to say and how can we make this better for everybody. And I think that really is the new style of empowered leadership, where you're shining a light. And this is why the luminary is the archetype, because you're shining a light on everyone in your community in order to be able to lift everyone up. And so for Lynn, that is leadership. And I think, you know, we all need to try and model this because it's what is transcending this oligarchic idea of power over. So I don't see someone who is in a power over dominating position. That's like old style power. And then I think new style power is all about sovereignty, and it's all about shining a light on others. And, you know, this is what I try and do. I'm involved in a number of projects and, you know, just trying to lift everyone up because, you know, everyone's so amazing. We've all got so many incredible gifts to bring into our circles.
Gorgeous. So some very basic ones that I was thinking of as well, I think Alyssa pointed out as well, is us as parents, we hold power if we have children. So being aware of that power dynamic and being aware of what boundaries you hold within that as well. And also the really simple ones of a teacher. A teacher holds lots of power over all of those children, and a GP and a doctor and anyone within that medical setting, anyone that we've been taught this person's very learned, we must listen to them, you know. Absolutely pay attention to them and pay attention to your own boundaries as well at the same time. You know, it's not about handing over all of our power to somebody else because we've been taught they have the power, you know.
I think there is, particularly in healthcare, there is this slide towards paternalism. And in particularly in women's healthcare, I think that women's concerns have been dismissed or negated for many years now, actually. And I think we've become divorced from our own personal knowing of what's happening within our bodies. And I think it is really good. This is why I really recommend spending time in nature, because I think when you're walking out in nature, you become much more attuned, not only to the rhythm of the natural environment, but to your own rhythms within your body. And I think when you're in that place of listening, you are better able to discover what your needs are. And then you can work with those needs. So if there's something wrong, you might become much more aware of that. And then you can visit the doctor from a place of saying, I have noticed this, rather than going to them and saying, what's wrong? You know, that's a completely different dynamic. So you're going to them and you're taking information that you're aware of because you're in tune with yourself, and you're consulting with the doctor, you know. So it's an equal dynamic because you're the person that knows the most about your body, right? And then your doctor is drawing on their extensive knowledge and expertise to recommend the best course of action in order to treat that thing that you've become aware of, you know. And so it's very different. And I think so many doctors, they're surprised when someone comes to them with this kind of countenance, because they're very used to people saying, I don't know what's wrong, tell me what I need to help me, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's have good boundaries and say we're going to finish any second now. And I just want to, I'll briefly mention, but and then maybe Bliss can share for a few minutes about her amazing course that she does. So I've been a part of this over the last year, and it is amazingly, oh, it's just so amazing, because Bliss branches over into, you know, the academic as well as the spiritual and the energy work and the physical work. So Bliss's work with this that I've linked at the bottom, her lunar womb temple training, is an online course. And she, well, you've got the gist of Bliss, you know, and when you go to do something with somebody, I think you need to know them and have heard them speak. So you have heard her speak, and if she, you know, resonates with you, that is the work that I highly recommend you do with her. She's got lots of other things, amazing things as well on her website. But do you want to share a little bit about that, Bliss, just for a moment?
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. So the Lunar Womb Temple Training is a course for people who have perhaps been doing this work and want to go deeper. So if you work with women's circles, if you work with ceremonial magic, if you are interested in the lunar cycle, if you are dedicated to a goddess and you've been practicing priestessing, this is for you. So it's really a deepening and an expansion into the history, the anthropology, the mythology, and the science, you know. So we're looking at anatomy, we're looking at astronomy. It's so broad and I just love it. So the themes are priestessing with the moon and the womb. So if you, perhaps you've been doing this kind of lunar cycle work for a while and you just want something that's going to expand your practice, or if you work as a healer and you are supporting those who carry wombs and those who carry vulvas, then this is really deepening your understanding of how those reproductive anatomical systems function, and how we can really bring them into balance, and how we can support the unfolding of this wisdom in the world, because this is really the source of everything. So this is mind-blowing, but everything that we have in human culture, so from mathematics to music to poetry to you know, all of the sciences, they're all coming from women sitting in caves during their bleeding time in ancient times, you know. And so everything is coming from that. Everything's coming from these primordial bleeding grandmothers.
Amazing, amazing. So the link to that course is at the bottom of this call, and we're going to end it here. And I am so grateful. It feels so good to do this on this big moon, and to do it with you first. Gorgeous, thank you.
So
and I think people really enjoyed it. So I'm going to say goodbye to Bliss, and I'm going to say goodbye to all of you, and I'm going to save this video so it can be rewatched from my page, and Bliss will share it around, and everybody share it to everybody that you think will benefit from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.